We're continuing our discussions here at the World Conference on AIDS, the International AIDS Conference in Melbourne. And we're here with Ed Ngoksin, who is with the Global Network for People Living with AIDS you're actually out of Cape Town, but you could be almost anywhere because this is a global project. And the World Health Organization just had a press conference with, 9 people on the dais. And we picked you because we figured you would be the one to give the most fair and broad perspective of this. And there are changes, and I think that's the best thing we can do right at this point. Just kind of give us what those changes are and at this point.
Right. I think what the guideline does is really consolidate all the recommendations that have been provided earlier and tailor it to specific needs of key populations. So it looks at the needs of men having sex with men, sex worker, people who use drugs, and also the needs of people living with HIV were part of those key populations. So apart from consolidating, I think the 2 new recommendations really looking at providing PrEP as an additional tool for prevention, and also making sure that the naloxone is available to prevent overdose for people who inject drugs. So those are the 2 new recommendations that really these guidelines are bringing in. Apart from that, it's more of a consolidating existing recommendations, so just to make that clear. And of course, those 2 recommendations are quite debatable, as you could see how it play out at this conference. And I do think that the guidelines are progressive in a way that it takes a step forward to really recommend that, to consider, for the countries to consider providing these services for those who need them.
Some of the questions in the press conference were that, of course, people would imagine that they would stop using condoms, and they would begin to, if they would begin to use this, and we're thinking maybe it should be an armamentarium addition rather than a change. And I think that one of the gentlemen from Brazil pushed the idea that people aren't already not using condoms as much as they should be or would be normally. So what's your take on that?
Well, even within the community sector, there's quite divided opinions about PrEP and whether we are ready now or we're not going to be ready until we know exactly if that intervention would work and how to translate that into health, mainstream health services. So on the guidelines committee, which was comprised of the community of people living with HIV, key population, the experts, and also program implementers, national health program policymakers, we had a heated debate around whether we are ready or not to recommend. And because, from my perspective, the issues around the methodology of how the WHO evaluate evidence is problematic, because when you look at clinical studies that come out, of course PrEP would be effective in preventing new infection from the clinical side of view, but from the implementation perspective, we have really little knowledge about how that works. And that's where the debate came in, and the communities were also divided at that panel. But because the methodology is really values the clinical studies and the outcomes that now we are clear that it works to prevent new infection, and based on that, I think the rooms were filled with kind of expert opinions more, and those communities who disagree with this become a minority. And I think it went to the voting and consensus, and finally people agreed that it should be a strong recommendations, while many of us also disagree, because there's still a lot of information and evidence that is missing, particularly when it comes to really rolling out this intervention.
In a real world.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the thing, and I'm not against or for, I'm just debating here, and I think it's important to consider that this is just not offering a pill. This is offering implementing something that takes evaluation, testing, and ongoing consistent behaviors.
Right.
And when to use it, when not to use it, how long to use it, is it a lifetime, is it, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I think the key message is that a set of services need to be provided, so not just pill alone. And I think the guidelines have made that very clear. It was misunderstood from the media perspective at the beginning to jump on the wagon and just say, okay, we need to implement PrEP, the MSM need to be on PrEP, while in fact, if you look at the content of the guidelines, it's clearly articulating the diverse needs, sexual health needs for anal pap smear, HIV testing, counseling, needs for strengthening community-based service delivery, bringing it closer to the health sector. So it's all of these recommendations that really matters. So the PrEP recommendation is really tiny. It's really small when compared to the broad spectrum of needs of that particular populations. And when for our communities, I think we struggle as well to define what the perception would be about the new recommendations, because we know that a lot of people living with HIV who are in need of treatment do not have access to it. And those are it's a matter of life saving medicines. We need to scale that up as well, and making sure that we protect those gains and not, letting the governments to implement the new PrEP strategy, but that have less information about and undermine the progress we made on treatment access for people living with HIV.
This is definitely something that is a broader picture, and not just, like you say, taking something that people are actually over in another side of the, on the other side of it, needing it for their treatment, and this is prevention. So there is that perception that this is, wait a minute, these people don't even have the drug, and they need it to survive or to live, and the other people are getting to prevent it. It's both are worthy, but I think we have to.
Yes, the prevention and treatment needs to work hand in hand, and I do think the problem is with the health system that needs to be able to respond to the needs of both sides, because if we lose on the preventing new infection, more people will be in need of treatment, and if we are putting less people on treatment, again, the HIV prevalence might go up as well if there's all the broader needs are not met, especially the needs about human rights, addressing critical enablers, which is also a very important chapter in the guidelines that really talk beyond just health sector and really start looking at, we need to work on reduction of stigma discrimination. There's legal environments that prevent key population from accessing services. So I must say that these guidelines really progressive, and I think it can be used as a tool to really advocate and work with the governments to demand better services.
So that may be the best part of it, is that actually it's a step where we're actually engaging the government in a discussion.
Right.
That may be the best
to start
part
the dialogue, I think that's the most important at this point. And let the community of people living with HIV and key populations whose guidelines are targeting be part of that conversation.
And the community has to be in there. I mean, each person has to make a choice individually. Is this something I want to do? And is it, of course, it is available, and then is this something I want to do, and for how long, and it's part of a health practice situation.
Right, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate you bringing this, enlightening us on the subject of the PrEP and the World Health Guidelines. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.